السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. الحمد لله رب العالمين، والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين نبينا محمد صلى الله عليه وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. أما بعد. Alhamdulillah, we have, first of all, I would like to introduce our Sheikh. Jazakallah khair, Sheikh, for coming here. And to start with, all of our shuyukh, including the Sheikh, don't like to be introduced, but as a courtesy, because the Sheikh flew from USA directly, coming here all the way to Malaysia to give us this talk. So I would just like to introduce. Sheikh is someone who is ethnically from Afghanistan, but he was born in Islamabad, Pakistan. And yes, he is the first Sheikh from Pakistan, and I'm actually really proud of him. Jazakallah khair. So Sheikh, at a young age, Sheikh migrated to UK, and then he migrated to America. And the beginning story is really interesting, and I would suggest everyone to watch a video. I think Sheikh gave an interview to Brother Sajid on YouTube, and it's really interesting story. You should watch the video. And after that, to complete or to gain more Islamic knowledge, the Sheikh went to other countries such as Pakistan, UAE, and gained ijazahs in many different, such as Hadith, Usul al-Fiqh, and other books. He studied under the shuyukh such as Sheikh Sadiq al-Manna and Dr. Yusuf Mishal. Currently, he's a da'i in One Foundation, One Message Foundation, and Imam and Khatib in San Diego, California. And the Sheikh has a general motive in which he says that the knowledge should be given freely. In the way which the Sheikh learned, that the knowledge should be given freely. So without further wasting of your time, I would like to pass the mic to the Sheikh. Jazakallah khair.
Alhamdulillah. Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen. Wassalatu wassalamu ala khatam al-anbiya wa ashraf al-mursaleen wa ala alihi wa ashabihi ajma'in amma ba'd. فنبدأ الحمد لله. أولا مشكورا للأخ المقدمة. I want to begin after praising Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and sending the peace and blessings on the Prophet alayhi salam by thanking our brother Hassan for that good introduction. I liked it was short, but he also got my motive, which is pretty cool, man. I haven't had anybody quote that before. Secondly, I want to thank the Hidayah Foundation. MashaAllah, doing great work here, and we hope that people support them in their Asrar PK program of giving da'wah and through sadaqah. And alhamdulillah, the Nottingham students and all of you for coming. Jazakumullahu khairan. But alhamdulillah, when we talk about youth, as the title is, in a progressing society, the first question we have to ask ourselves, what does it mean to be progressing? I mean, there is a difference between progressing and regressing, right? If you look at mankind, we have a which forbid such practices. With the Sahih Hadith, we find that Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam, he forbid any kind of racial superiority. And he told us the Arab are no better than the Ajam, or the Ajam than the Arab, nor the white from the black, or the black from the white. Only thing that shows the superiority of a person is their piousness. Doesn't matter what race they come from, doesn't matter what language they speak, doesn't matter what ethnicity they are. The ones who are the most pious are closest to Allah. What a beautiful message. And that message was immediately implemented. It's not just a theory, right? It was implemented when we see the likes of Bilal al-Habashi, radiallahu anhu, the great Sahabi, who before Islam didn't even own himself. Before Islam, he didn't own himself, he was a slave. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala blessed him with Iman. And even though he was not Arab, he was not Qurashi, he was not Banu Hashim, he was not of any tribe, we don't even know his further lineage, but because of his Iman, Allah honored him. As a Sahaba, they assigned him to be the Amir of Sham. He was the Muaddin of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Everybody wanted to be the one who gave the adhan for the Prophet ﷺ, but he got that honor. And interestingly, Sham, which is current day Palestine, Lebanon, Jordan, and Syria, about. That area were the lightest skinned of the Muslim Ummah at that time. And one of the darkest of the Sahaba was their Amir, and nobody even mentioned that point. Like today, when we look back at racial relations and look back at that, we see that point. But in the Kutub al-Tariq, nobody pointed that out even. Nobody cared whether he was black or white. Sahib al-Rumi being, somebody who was raised in Rome, nobody cared. Salman al-Farisi was a Persian. He was not Arab. The Prophet ﷺ said, he's from my household. And look at that. In such short time, what progress was made. The practice of burying your daughters was finished. Alhamdulillah. And now we hear that society is progressing. But interestingly, if you look at statistics, in many countries, and I won't mention their names because maybe someday I need to go there and I don't want to get banned. But you can Google it, you're researchers, I'm sure you guys have take-home tests, so I'm sure you Google it up. Anybody get that one? No. You'll get it later, sorry. When you're Googling those answers, okay. There are societies today that do ultra scans, and if the fetus is a female, they will abort the child. And of course, these are non-Muslim societies in general. And it's got to such a point that there are villages in certain countries, I won't mention the names. No, really, I won't mention the names, no. Even though Modi's not going to give me a visa anyway, so I don't know why I'm worried about it. They're called mad villages. Because there's the ratio of men to women has become so unnaturally unbalanced because of this practice of killing female fetuses. And it's something Islam forbids. So if that's progressing, then I'm not sure if society is really progressing. Right? If you look at race relations in the United States, for example, they're very bad. Alhamdulillah, Malaysia is a beautiful country, a multi-ethnic country in harmony. That's what I keep hearing, so I got to repeat it. That live harmonious, mashallah, that's wonderful. It's really nice. But America, not so much. You can look up the news and so on, right? So I wonder, how is this progressing? Rather, I think the best that we should work towards is to bring the principles of the Quran and the Sunnah into our own lives and into our society. Why? When we look at societies and cultures and communities, there are many ideas on how to best run society. Somebody may say communism, and maybe not so much anymore, but there was a time when there was a big rise of red states and communism, and many big countries and small countries were going communist, and there was an idea that everybody's going to be equal, and workers and doctors and engineers are all going to get paid the same and live the same and eat the same and dress the same. But I don't know. I mean, the leaders never dressed like the people, so I don't know how that was really going to work out. The generals weren't exactly living like the street sweepers. And if the one who doesn't go to school and doesn't get education gets paid the same as the one who goes through 6 years of med school, not sure who the hell wants to be a doctor then, right? So that society, that system obviously didn't work. Then there was the idea of capitalism. Big fish eats little fish. Who cares? Just make money, son. And it was just, whatever you gotta do, just make your money. If you gotta eat the little fish, then eat them up. And that's a free market, it's great. And then very quickly, every single country that has capitalism became a not capitalistic country, meaning there's no purely capitalistic country. Even in America, which is one of the countries that really champions capitalism, we're not a purely capitalistic society because we have the Better Business Bureau, we have all kinds of social welfare programs, we have all kinds of checks and balances to keep capitalism in its place. So we realize that if you let it go, that's a system that doesn't work either. So as Muslims living in society, we need to teach society that progress is to live by the code that our Creator gave us. Think about this. Who's the engineering major here? Raise your hands. All right. Any English majors? Good luck teaching. Any art majors? Yeah, I didn't think so. How many biomed majors? Your parents are proud of you. So, for engineering majors, because we got a lot, alhamdulillah, surprisingly, if you invent something new, right? Not Steve Jobs or Bill Gates or Bezos or whatever his name is, right? Let's say you invent a new product, a new type of cell phone, and it's amazing. Not only is it a cell phone, but you can taste food through it. I don't know how, man. Figure it out. That's your job. I'm not the engineering major, right? And you can do all kinds of cool virtual reality. I don't know, you can put your finger through it and wiggle somebody's ear, I don't know, right? But you are the one that designed it, and you developed it, and you did the prototyping, and you did the manufacturing, and you did the R&D, and you did the testing, and you did the FMEA. Who knows what FMEA is? Engineering majors don't know what failure mode analysis? Oh, sad. Where's your professors? You did all your failure testing, and you did your risk assessment. I have a computer science degree, right? When you did all of that, now, that product, when it hits the market, who knows best how to use that product? You do. Who knows what is the best temperature to keep it at, how much you should charge it or not charge it, whether you should, how much water it can resist, how much humidity can it take? Who's the one that knows that? You. And as a responsible inventor, what will you do? You will make what we would call a user manual, right? More technically, it would be called an IFU, instruction for use, right? So you make that book or booklet, and you say, hey, I'm the manufacturer, I know best about this product, and this is how you use it. Here's your warnings, what not to do, here's what to do, here's how to operate it, here's how to troubleshoot it, right? How many of you have bought a cell phone before? You never bought a cell phone? You, yeah, you have, so why don't you raise your hands? Come on. This is not one of those lectures that you go to sleep in and the lecturer just keeps looking over here and you guys are just saying, I just want to log out. I'm going to be calling on people, right? And there's a quiz. Surprise. How many of you ever bought a cell phone? Let's see who's not truthful. Okay, good. When you bought a cell phone, when you opened the box, you did your unboxing and video that I don't know why, because nobody cares. Was there a little booklet inside? Instruction for use? Okay? And that tells you that that's responsible, because if you don't, like I work with regulatory bodies, If you're a company that develops a medical device and you don't put that, we're gonna fine you, or we're gonna stop your ISO certification or your FDA approval. Why? Because that's irresponsible. So now, let's take it back to society. Who created us? Allah. Whether you want to call him the creator, whether you want to call him al-Khaliq or Allah, I'm not going to get into that, but we do have a creator. Who believes that we don't have a creator? Any atheists here? Really? All right, cool. Where do you think we came from? If you don't mind me asking. You don't know? Okay. But you don't think we have a creator because you raised your hand, or you're not sure?
More to the side of creator, but
Okay. Okay. What's your major, by the way?
psychology.
Psychology. Nice. Do you know what the minimum gene concept is? Okay. You have notes? All right, you can watch the video, but when you go home, look it up. Okay? Or back to your dorm. Not home, right? There's a minimum gene concept, meaning, and again, there's a difference between theories in science and something that you can actually test in a controlled environment, right? Like evolution is a theory, but interspecies evolution has never been tested in a closed clinical trial, unless you got somebody who proved that it has. I'll be more than happy to look at it. So that means it's a theory. Could be right, could be wrong. Scientifically, we cannot consider it to be a scientific fact, right? But what we do have are trials done where you take a single cell organism and you start to take genetics out. And we realize that even in theory, you cannot have the minimum living cell, a single cell organism that has less than 200 genetics. In practicality, from what we can actually test in a scientific environment, under 300 something, they collapse. So that means the first living cell had to have that complete set of genetics for it to have functioned. So question for you, if we don't have a creator, who set that minimum? Are you leaning towards the having creator now? Look it up, inshallah. So, I have a second question for you. I have a phone. Yes, I was one of the people that raised my hand. I bought a phone before. You know, if I look at it, it unlocks. It's got face recognition, and it's got cameras that can take pictures, and it's got a bunch of apps. It's got a phone app that I don't answer the calls on. It's got an email app that I don't read the emails on. All kinds of cool apps, right? Anyway. Would you believe me if I told you nobody made this? You wouldn't? Why not?
Because we know that
How do you know that? Have you ever been in a factory that made one?
no, I know this is.
How do you know? Go ahead.
Media, I guess we know that.
Media. Has media ever lied to you?
Sure, yeah.
But you still trust them enough that you're sure that this was made in a factory. Have you seen this one being made? What if I told you that don't believe the false news or fake media, over billions of years, grains of sand evolved to make this particular phone by themselves? No creator, no manufacturer, no designer, no factory in China, no child labor, none of that. Over years and years and years, grains of sand made this phone exactly the way it is, with all the apps, with the space unlock, the camera. You know what's funny? It used to be a regular case, and now it's got a stand. It just evolved that way. So it needed it, so it evolved. Would you believe me? Be honest.
No.
I'm asking him. You guys are already Muslim, man. Relax. Huh?
No, I understand the point you're making, but
But
the way scientists suggest that humans came to be or the animals came to be, which I'm not an expert in, I'm not studying that at all.
but
They have evidentiary back and forth.
ooh, evidence for evolution. I'd love to hear it.
Yes.
Go ahead.
Again, I'm not studying this in depth.
But you believe in it.
Yes, yeah.
See, but that's interesting, right? You believe that there's a factory making this, even though the media could lie to you. You believe in scientists telling you that we evolve, even though you've never studied their evidence. But I can tell you, right? And then I've already told you what you're going to look up when you go home about single-cell organisms, that the minimum gene concept, which scientifically proves in a clinical trial that the first living cell had to have already been programmed, right?
Yeah.
So think about this. You standing here, right, are more complex than this phone. Your eyes, your brain, your ears, your ability to recognize. Sometimes, if I'm wearing a mask or something, the phone doesn't recognize me. I'm wearing my shades, you know? But you recognize people even when they're wearing masks. Like, I know that guy. I'm trying to hide, right? So you understand? Like, if I drop this phone right now, oh, no, I'm just kidding, right? Would it heal itself?
Strong device.
Would it heal itself? I know it's a strong device. I've cracked many iPhones, but not that strong. Huh? Would it like start to fix itself? If you get cut, do you heal yourself? White blood cells start clotting. Come on. Ask the bio major, or the one bio major that we have, right? Right? That's amazing, right? I mean, if I just put this phone down, does it charge? No, but when you go to sleep, do you charge? You do charge, man. Come on, you're gonna go to sleep, you don't wake up fresh. I feel good. No, right? Get some coffee, man. Right? So you see, in reality, there is more evidence that we have a creator than this has a creator, right? And those that told us about the fact that we have a creator are more trustworthy than the ones who told you that this is made in a factory. Let me tell you how. Okay? You did admit that media does lie to you sometimes, right? Have you heard of a man named the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam? Do you know that even before he was considered a prophet, that they called him the most honest and trustworthy? That even in the he never lied. I have two homeworks for you now. One was to look up the minimum gene concept. The second is to look up a video. You can put Uthman ibn Farooq moon splitting, right? If I told you go outside, split the moon, bring it back together, can you do it? No. But he did. And there's eyewitness accounts, historic accounts, things that can be verified from different geographical locations, things that can be verified at a higher degree than most of the history that you believe in, right? So when we look at things like the theory of evolution, the evidence falls apart because we cannot test any of it in a controlled environment, right? Let me explain to you how. What does it mean to test something in a controlled environment? First thing, you need to be able to isolate it, have your hypothesis, and test it with placebo and something that's not it, and test its effects, and then prove repeatability. Right? So can we take a bird in a controlled environment and have it evolve and then prove repeatability? We cannot. Right? Most of what you hear about the theory of evolution is not what Darwin came up with. Right? It's very different. Even Darwin, for example, if you were to base your ideas on what Darwin did, he believed certain races were superior to others. Do you want to believe that for evolution? That certain races were more evolved than others? In fact, he believed men were more evolved than women. I didn't say that, sisters. Don't kick me out. Don't walk out. Relax. Right? This was his ideas. In fact, when I was in school and I studied Darwinism, evolution, the idea was we were primates, and then we became Neanderthal, and then we became humans. And they had this little chart. You can Google it still, right? It had like a primate, and then this Neanderthal, and then a guy with a briefcase. I don't know why it's a guy. Why can't it be a woman? But I don't know, right? Sexist evolutionists, right? But today, evolutionists will say, no, that's wrong. Now, the theory changed. Because they don't know, right? Now they split. Say, no, you know what? Neanderthals were a different branch, and humanoids were a different branch, and they coexisted, so they did not evolve from each other. So you see, this is guesswork. It's not evidence.
It's But if they, like, you know, as science is, like, it evolves over time as evidence accumulates. Right?
True.
So is it really guesswork?
It is.
Or did they gather more evidence and refine the theory to a certain point?
Great question. So now, for example, they used to consider it as a scientific fact that the world is flat. There's papers that were written on it, right? Now we say that was all off, just kidding, sorry, right? So that tells you that this is, in a way, guesswork. And then, of course, things get disproved, right? So now here, when we look at the theory of evolution, have you ever read anywhere the scientific fact of evolution?
No, I don't think things in science actually ever go that way.
Oh, they are. There are scientific facts. You know, you can look it up. For example, if I drop this, this will fall. Right? That's a scientific fact because I can test it. I can repeatedly drop it, and I can see that it does fall. Now, why does it fall? There's theories. Gravity is a theory, right? Inertia is a theory. But the fact that this falls is a fact because, as I told you earlier, in a controlled environment, I can take something else and drop it and see if it has the same effect. If I can repeat it continuously, and then depending on what certainty you want to look, we can consider it to be a fact. Theory is not a fact.
The reasons that it fell, gravity.
Well, again, gravity is a theory. You know why? Because we can't actually prove what gravity is. Maybe I'm getting a little too deep for you guys.
The reason I was listening to like gravity is a thing.
How is that? How do you know why something falls?
Because you can make predictions based
On
knowledge of gravity to like.
No. What is gravity?
The definition of gravity.
I don't know. You're not going to do it on a test. I'm saying, if I drop this, it falls. That I agree, and no doubt that's scientific fact. Why does it fall? Now we have theories. Because something with the same weight, if it's dropped at the same time, and something that's heavier that drops, what drops first? What's inertia? This is all where we start getting into scientific debates, right? Not the point of the subject here today. But what I will say is when you have evidence that the first cell required a creator, had to have had that design in place, or it could not have functioned, then the theory of evolution takes a big hit. Because the theory of evolution tells us that we came from nothing. So you would have to have two genetics or one genetics, whatever, for it to grow. But even a single cell organism could not have survived without it. Even if you take the idea of if we take intelligent design, and if you take the idea of natural selection, right? For example, we get told that certain creatures, when they're in need of certain things, then they evolve to have them, right? Is that right or wrong?
Yes. Yeah.
You don't seem too sure, bro.
We were doing this in class last semester. It was more
Okay.
like we were given 5 definitions of natural selection.
Okay.
And each of them would be like given a mark out of 5. And that definition was like, it wasn't the best. I think it was species evolved. It's not an individual organism evolved, it's about species like.
Excellent. So who coordinates that?
It's based on survival needs. I guess.
Okay, excellent. Survival needs. You're good with that?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
I got you. So a species evolves without coordination. Right? Like it's not like all the monkeys in the world get together and say, hey, we have a meeting, trees are getting taller, global warming, we gotta. No, okay? So that means without any coordination, a species evolves due to survival needs.
Environmental pressure, surrounding mutations.
Okay. How did mammals start suckling milk?
How did they start?
Mm-hmm. See, again, now the definition you gave would not work with that. Because if the first creatures before mammals were able to survive without a offspring suckling milk from the mother, whether it's a cow or a human, I'm not discussing that, then there would be no survival need for it to happen.
But survival needs were not the only ways that.
All right. What else?
Mutations.
Okay. So mutations, I got you. Are they planned and synchronized, or are they random? Okay. How does a whole species randomly mutate to have milk coming out of only the mother's chest or breast or whatever, and only for the offsprings? How does that randomly happen? Why don't we randomly have horns? Why don't we randomly have tails or feathers? You see, when you actually put it to the test, it all falls apart.
How the case would be given by an evolutionary biologist, which I'm not. So I cannot properly, but
I'm just talking about your beliefs.
yeah.
I've debated with evolutionary biologists. It's on YouTube, One Message Foundation. You can watch it, by the way. Go ahead.
If the mutation had survived utility,
Excellent.
and if it persisted
Okay.
because of the survival utility,
So now think about that. If the mutation had certain things for survival, so that would mean it couldn't be individual. Because in species, individuals that mutate would not be able to have the survival of the species. It would have to be multiple, right? Without coordination. And if the species was already surviving without it, then why would the mutation be necessary? In fact, today, we still have species that do not have a mother breastfeeding the offspring, right? So that means it's not necessary for survival. In fact, in the same environment that species who do mammals survive, there are also non-mammals that survive not having that ability.
yeah, the mutation doesn't have to be necessary as long as it occurs and it wasn't detrimental to the organism.
Okay, so that means randomly, a bunch of the same species started to have milk in the breast of the mother without any necessity before that. Come on. You're too smart to think that, right? That's like me saying randomly, we're gonna have soda coming out of our head. because if there was no need for the milk, then why would it randomly mutate? And if it did, on an individual, like if there was one person whose eyes were cross-eyed or whatever, it wouldn't be species-wide. And why would it help them survive if they were already surviving as other species are without it?
Now, the way body structure will evolve for millions of years, I do know the underlying mechanism. Again, this is not my field, so
Sure.
I'll get this point properly.
Go ahead, the way they what?
Yeah, I cannot do the
Okay.
argument properly because
So,
I'm really not.
No problem. What I want you to do is two things now, all right? Or three things. One, when you go home tonight, don't worry about anybody else. Pray that if there is a creator, then that creator guides you to the truth. Okay? You good? Second, look up the minimum gene concept. Third, look up the moon splitting video. You good? All right. So, when we have a creator, and those who believe that there is, then who would know best how that creation should function is the creator. So, if you develop a phone, you would know best how that phone should function. And you would, as an intelligent creator, give some kind of guidance to the user how to use it. So when we as Muslims do believe that there is a creator, and we believe that creator created us with intelligent design that could not be random, that scientifically, and what you're going to look up, is proven that had to have had certain things for life to have even survived at a very low single cell level, then that means that creator knows best how we should live. And that creator is not going to leave us without guidance. Just like you wouldn't make a new invention and just throw it and tell people use it as you like. And we as Muslims then believe that that creator sent guidance in the form of holy scriptures. It being what was sent to Moses, peace and blessings be upon him, the Torah. And what was sent to David, peace and blessings be upon him, what we call the Zabur. And what was sent to Jesus, peace and blessings be upon him, and what we call the Injil. And what was lastly sent to the Prophet Muhammad, peace and blessings be upon him, that we call the Quran. And we as Muslims love all the prophets. You don't see us ever disrespect Jesus or Moses or Abraham or Muhammad, peace and blessings be upon him. You don't see us make cartoons or do things, because we love them and respect them. And we show that they had one message. And that's why we're even called the One Message Foundation. Why? Because the same message that was brought by Adam and Noah and Abraham and Moses and David and Jesus was brought by Muhammad, peace and blessings be upon him. What's the message? Worship none but the one Creator. Live by what that Creator has said. Whether we take the 10 Commandments, which is found in the Old Testament and the New Testament. What do they tell us? Hear, O Israel, your Lord is one. Don't worship idols. You find this, right? And the same when we find in Qul Allahu Ahad, right? That say that Allah is one. Don't make shirk. Don't worship others. Worship none but Allah. And follow the Prophet of your time. This is the message that all the prophets brought. And then our Creator, the one that created us, gave us guidance on how to live. Because without the idea of divine guidance, then morality becomes subjective. Right? What's moral and what's not? If there's no Creator, and there is no God, and there is no Holy Scripture, then what is right and wrong is wholly up to an individual. Because if you say society makes right and wrong, well, in America, there was a time when, actually, let's have some fun. We had a really fun discussion. I liked it. So let's have some more fun. Who believes that you could be an atheist and be moral? I already had fun with you. Let me say somebody else. Okay, there we go, guy in the back. Unless you want to go again. All right. So, tell me this. If you're an atheist, how would you know what's moral and what's not?
I mean, I'm not atheist myself, but
I know, but you...
friends of mine that are.
Okay.
I believe that they do understand the right and wrong
from what?
They probably from society.
Society, okay. So societal norms set right and wrong. Would you agree?
Yes, yeah.
Okay. So if society agrees that slavery is moral, like in America, there was a time when the majority of Americans believed slavery was like you could take people from Africa who were just minding their business, kidnap them, put them on boats, force them to come to America, rape, pillage, take away their identity, beat them, make them work in cotton fields, and that was perfectly fine in America for 100 plus years, I believe, right? Would that be moral?
Societally, yes.
So you think that's moral?
No. Me personally, obviously not, but
What do you think? You think it's moral?
No, I would say morality is more based on human well-being, like whatever has human well-being.
Human well-being.
Yes.
Okay, so societal norms are no longer, that's out?
Yes, yeah.
Okay. All right, so the earlier thing of societal norms, we would all agree then that doesn't work, right? Because society could come together and say, you know what, killing, I was going to use a term, but killing Eskimos is okay. Hopefully there's no Eskimos here to get offended, right? And I mean, I personally think that's wrong, but I'm saying if society came together and said it's okay, that doesn't make it okay, right? 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 Okay. So now you said, what did he say? Human what?
Human well-being.
Human well-being. Okay.
Well-being. Yeah, human well-being.
Okay. So now tell me, in accordance to human well-being, does a woman have the right to abort a fetus? Uh-oh. Better be careful, there's women behind you.
That is something I'm not...
That is something you don't want to answer. Okay, what about euthanasia? If some old person wants to kill themselves because they don't want to live anymore, do you think that's moral?
It's their decision, and it's better for their well-being.
Wow.
I think so, yeah.
You think so, huh? Because the majority of the world has banned it, who believe that it's not moral. So they would believe that you're immoral for believing that it's okay. That's interesting. And you would then believe it, they're immoral for not allowing it. And that means neither one of you is moral. Right? So if they stop somebody from committing basically suicide, euthanasia, for being somebody older, they're stopping them, and you believe they should have that right, then that's immoral. So you believe they're immoral, they believe you're immoral.
I don't think the perspective of competing like that. I mean, there's another
Okay.
to be had on both sides.
Okay.
I think. It's not a black.
You said human well-being, right? What if we have somebody in society that cannot work? They're physically disabled, they're mentally challenged, they don't benefit society, right? And we decide we're just going to shoot them because human well-being overall doesn't benefit from them.
It's human well-being.
Well, so is it individual human well-being then?
It's really, yes, yeah.
Of individual. Okay. So what if I decide that my well-being is I'm never going to work and I'm going to steal from you? Personal. I think that's great. I don't work. You work. I take your money. Woo-hoo! So is that moral?
No, it's not.
Something that can be proven to be divine, not man-made. And inshallah, I will prove it to you. So don't worry. If I told you, what language did you speak? That's it? You only speak English?
A bit of Swahili.
Oh, a bit? Come on, man. You sad. You're an American. It was a joke. They said, what do you call somebody who speaks 2 languages?
Bilingual.
Bilingual. 3 languages.
Bilingual.
4 languages.
Bilingual.
Polyglot, but okay, you can say polyglot. That's not a word, right? What do you call somebody who speaks 1 language? American. I'm American, I can make that joke, right? Even though I speak like 4 or 5 languages, right? How many people here, I'm gonna pick a not so sensitive, how many here speak Japanese? Nobody? Oh man, you guys are racist. All right. How many of you speak Korean? We have 1, 2. 2? That's it? All right. Now, I don't speak Korean at all. And I cannot read Korean. I don't even know if you work. Maybe I can learn some from you later. Huh? If I wrote a book in Korean that was so well written that no expert of Korean language from Korea, North and South, could match it, would you think that's a miracle? Yes? Woohoo, you're Muslim soon. All right. The Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam could not read or write. He was not a poet. Couldn't read or write. Historic evidence. I mean, if you look at historians like non-Muslims like Karen Armstrong, or if you look at Martin Lings, or if you look at classic Arabic authors as well, from Orientalists, everybody agrees he could not read or write. And everybody agrees that he was not a poet, that he had never written poetry. And the Quran was revealed to him that was so eloquent that it challenged the entire Arabian society, including some very, very eloquent poets from Asr al-Jahiliyyah that we still study their Arabic. It was so amazing that match a book like it. A book that he couldn't even read himself, right? And they couldn't. How could that be? Earlier you said that if I did it, it would be a miracle, so then he did it, it's a miracle too, right? The Quran talks about things that scientists are developing now. There's a book called The Bible, the Quran, and Science by Dr. Miraj Bukai, who's a doctor. You can look it up free online. Where he talks about scientific facts that could not have been known by the Prophet Muhammad, peace and blessings be upon him, at his time, that are in the Quran, including the development of fetuses, including how waves are under the ocean, sweet water and salt water, how they touch but don't mix, even though he had never been to a place with salt water. Right? He wasn't a diver, he didn't go out boating. Many of those things, including the fact that the different heavenly bodies, planets and sun and moon, have an orbit. How would he have known that? See, if it was one thing, you could say he could guess. But when you have repeatability, it shows the truth of the message. So when you have the Quran with linguistic miracles, with scientific miracles, with prophecies of who would win battles between Romans and Persians that came through years later, when you have prophetic miracles like the splitting and coming back of the moon, like the prophecies of Istanbul or the Persian Empire falling to Muslims, which could not have been imagined at a time like the Battle of Khandaq, when the Muslims were only in Medina and about to get wiped off the face of the earth. And each one of those coming true one after the other shows a divine message. And when you have a divine message, then that is the best of what to live by. So bringing it back to our subject, before I open up for question and answer, because we're having so much fun. You know, when we talk about progressing, and we talk about civilization, and we talk about morals and values, we always have to understand that if we leave it to be subjective, then everybody has their own morality. Things that we in America consider moral, you would consider immoral. And things that you consider moral, we would consider immoral, right? Those things all go back and forth. There is no norm in society. You know, whether cannibalism is moral or not, how would you prove it? Whether incest is moral or not, there is no human health issue that can prove it, right? I mean, can you say it's moral to eat dead people? Well, why not? I mean, they're already dead. It's meat, right? And I think most of us, I don't know, you can raise your hand if you disagree, would think it's immoral to eat a dead person. No? You think it's all right? You guys better keep away from the graveyards. And the student is starving anyway, he's like, man, I gotta eat. Right? So that's, again, you see? So this is why, as Muslims, we believe in a divine morality. We believe the halal and haram that Allah has set. When Allah says don't steal, don't kill, don't rape, don't hurt, don't harm, then we believe in it, not because it's good for me or not because society agrees or not. When Allah has forbidden, as the Prophet ﷺ told us, that whoever takes a free person and enslaves them, then Allah will be their plaintiff against them on the Day of Judgment. Then we say slavery is haram. Right? Why? It's wrong. Why? Because Allah said so. Not because my society may change their mind. When Allah says incest is haram, incest is haram. When Allah says eating dead bodies is haram, it's haram. When Allah says don't harm each other, don't hurt each other, don't kill each other, then we set that divine morality. And that's how our youth should function in a progressing society, by taking things back to the Quran and the Sunnah and seeing how society can benefit as it did in the time of the Prophet, peace and blessings be upon him, and the time of the Khulafa, Abu Bakr and Umar and Uthman and Ali radiallahu anhu, and others that came after them, like Umar ibn Abdul Aziz, and others like Salahuddin Ayyubi and others in history that have shown a great example. And I would say, inshallah, Malaysia is also a great example of a functioning society with Islamic values that has inclusion, multi-ethnicity and harmony. MashaAllah. So, inshallah, with that, I will end the talk and I will open up for questions and answers, inshallah. Fadl. He's going to be the one calling, but since you raised it already, go for it. Go for it.
So I just wanted to ask this question, but when you were talking about Asia,
Yeah.
and you mentioned that society, a lot of the countries around the world, do plan it.
Yes.
Therefore, the no will become, it's the wrong thing to do.
Yeah.
Yet, however, this currently the societies that are around the globe, a lot of them are influenced by religion, regardless of what religion it is.
That is true.
They are influenced by that. Do you think, based on that, if the entire world did not believe in creation, did not believe in any religion, so do you think something like Asia would be then acceptable by everyone?
That's a good question. Let me repeat the question in a brief way. Let me know if I got it right. Which is, euthanasia is banned in the majority of the world, except very, very few countries that allow it. And one of the reasons, and I would agree with you, is because most countries are based out of some kind of religious value, right? Whether it's Judeo-Christian or Islamic or Buddhist or Hindu or whatever else it may be. And if the world was devout or void of religious values, do we think a world would be where a majority would, or all of it would allow euthanasia? I don't know. You know why I don't know? Because when you don't have objective morality, then it's all up, it's fair game, right? They may come together and go, nah, it's wrong, or they may come together and go, nah, it's okay. They may come together and say abortion's okay, and they may come together and say it's not okay. They may come together and say, death penalty is moral, and they may come together and say it's immoral. There is no objective anything. It's all subjective, right? Then it's just gonna depend on how you derive morals. Do you do it at a societal basis? Do you have to vote on it? Like, hey, let's vote whether all people are equal or not, right? I mean, most people are racist. Not in Malaysia, it's a great society, multi-ethnic, harmonious society. I love Malaysia. Please let me back in. No, I'm just kidding. Don't let me back in. Anyway, so, but most of the world is racist in whatever way it may be, right? I'm not saying white and black necessarily, right? I don't know if you have any Somalis here. We have Dawood and Hawiya, Darood and Ishaq, and you may have Pashtuns and Farzaban, Punjabis and Urdu speaking, or French and British. I mean, everybody has their own prejudice and racism, right? So now if you leave it as subjective, then somebody could vote and say, you know what, French are not as good as the British, right? And they shouldn't have the same rights. And if you can get a majority, khalas, that's moral then, right? So this is why I really couldn't answer that, because it would be up for grabs, right? Good. Can we have a quiz? I'm sure they're going to hate you for that. Or that my idea, or the fact that they're going to grade it, or that they're going to send it to your professors, or that your degree is going to depend on it. None of that was my idea, right? Just letting you guys know. Just kidding, by the way. They did it as a quiz, but it's not good.
Just give us a minute, we're setting it up. We'll first have the quiz and then we'll open the floor for question and answers.
Cool. But while they were setting it up, anybody want to ask a quick question? Go ahead.
You hear about the moon spin? How was there physical evidence?
The what?
Moon spin. Moon spin.
The moon splitting?
Yeah.
How?
We've been to space, right? We've been to.
You've been to space, you?
I have.
So who's been to space?
Astronauts.
Astronauts? From what country, man?
Your own country?
My country?
US.
Pakistan? Maybe they snuck in there. No, I'm just kidding. No offense to any Pakistanis.
Surely there should be some evidence.
But there is evidence.
No, aside from, I know there's like some textual evidence.
No. Scientific evidence. Obviously, you haven't watched my video. Astaghfirullah. What kind of, you guys didn't make them pre-watch my videos?
I've seen one video.
I'm leaving. I'm going back to IIUM, whatever. No. I mean, I could tell you, but it might take a little bit longer. I'll give you a brief answer, but you can look it up. Uthman ibn Farooq, moon splitting, video will come up. You can watch it, inshallah. So there are craters that draw a line across the moon. Did you know that? And there are two sides of the moon that are distinctly different. Did you know that? Okay. And NASA has a theory, not that they have proven it, because again, for something to be a fact, we need to be able to prove it in a controlled environment, which we could never. So NASA has a theory that these were actually two moons that collided at one time. Right? And there are satellite moons to other planets like Uranus and Saturn that we've also observed that have two faces. That means at a time they were either split or there were two that crashed together. So this moon that we have, according to NASA, there is a theory that there was definitely a time that was either in two pieces or was two distinct that came together, right? And that's why we have a line across the moon. Now, why is the line? There are many theories, right? Some people may say there are lava caves, but then that doesn't make sense because there's no volcanoes. Somebody might say it's due to meteorites hitting, but then it wouldn't make a line across, and so on, right? So the leading theory on NASA's website that you can read is that this moon was possibly in two pieces at one time and came back together. And that's why you find those markings, right? Now again, I'm not saying NASA is saying that the Prophet Muhammad split the moon. That's not NASA's job. They don't go and verify religious miracles, but they do show that Americans supposedly have landed on the moon, and they have pictures, and we have telescopes that show that there is a line of cracks across the moon. Now, what caused them? There are many discussions, but one of the leading theories by non-Muslims is that there was a time that these were two distinct pieces that came back together. Now, so that's scientific evidence. Then we can definitely get into textual evidence. Now, let me ask you, have you heard of a man called Alexander the Great? You heard of him? Did he exist? Probably. You don't think he existed?
Oh, yeah.
Okay, come on. Let's be honest here. So he existed, right? What did he do?
I don't really know.
You're not a history major, are you? I hope not. All right. So Alexander the Great, which I think most of you know, he was from Macedonia, right? And he conquered a good amount of the world, all the way from Europe into what is current day Pakistan, all the way down to where Egypt is. That's why there's a city called Alexandria in Egypt, most of the Middle East, part of Persia, right? So he conquered this huge area, a very few, like remarkable, extraordinary. That's why he's called Alexander the Great, right? Right or wrong? Did he do it or no? Yeah, okay. Be sure about it. Know about it, right? How do you know? Were you there? Textbooks.
Yeah, the historical evidence.
What historical evidence do we have? You're guessing.
Oh, no, I'm saying.
You're saying.
Journals.
Journals. He wrote a journal?
Wow.
Wow. What?
Eyewitnesses.
Eyewitnesses. Amazing. What's their names? Do we have eyewitnesses? I mean, if you have eyewitness, you have to know who he is, right? Or she.
You don't need to know who they are.
You don't need to know. So just, there was somebody.
As long as you know that they existed, that they were.
How would you know they existed?
Like say someone wrote something in a journal.
Somebody wrote something in a journal. Okay, no, I'm good. Go ahead.
Carbon dated back to that time. Like,
Carbon dated.
yeah.
Do you know how carbon dating works? Obviously not. And what's your name?
Someone.
Someone I like you, all right? Just don't get offended, right? So, first thing, for an eyewitness account to be credible, you have to know who they are, right? Because how would you know they were an eyewitness? And for a journal to be carbon dated to a particular lifespan is very difficult because carbon dating gives you a range, right? Some of that range could be 100 years, could be 50 years, right? And in fact, there are no carbon dated journal entries or written documents that prove an eyewitness account of Alexander the Great that we have today. Go ask your history majors. Okay. But due to oral traditions mostly, and some written traditions that are not contemporary to Alexander the Great, we believe that he existed and he did those extraordinary things. Now, I can give you the names. Earlier you didn't have names, right? I can give you names of who were the eyewitness accounts who saw the splitting of the moon. Abdullah ibn Abbas, from memory, bro. That's how I do it. Right? Anas ibn Malik, right? Not just Muslims, because you might be like, well, they're biased. They're Muslim, right? Not just from Mecca, because Anas ibn Malik was in Medina, different city. But the enemies of the Prophet, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, like Abu Sufyan, who was not Muslim at the time, later when he became Muslim, he's one of the people that said, I saw it, right? But then you might come back and say, well, he became Muslim, so maybe he became biased. But Walid ibn Mughira and Abu Jahl and Abu Lahab, who never became Muslim, were eyewitness accounts who said, yes, we saw it. Get Al-Bidayah wa Nihaya of Ibn Kathir or any of those books. I have scanned them in the video, page numbers and all of that. With the chain, not only can I tell you who they are, but like Abdullah ibn Abbas, I can tell you who his father is, Abbas, right? I can tell you who his brother is. No, I studied his tariq, I'm not looking at his name, right? His brother's name Hudayl, right? I can tell you who his children, who he's married to, how long he lived, where he died, how good was his memory. I can give you all that detail about each eyewitness, right? Not one person, not two, not three, not four, not 10, 20, 30, 40. I can list them to you. But then you might say maybe there was some kind of a natural event that was only visible in the Arabian Peninsula because how come it wasn't seen in other parts of the world? Right, I'm helping you. Right? Well, there is evidence, and again, the hadith sciences that we have are very strict. Like we have to have jarh al-ta'dil, and we have to know the adl al-rawi and dabt al-rawi, very strict, right? But due to oral tradition and many written traditions, you will find that people in South India, they were eyewitnesses, not Muslims, to this event. And when later they met Muslims, they gave their account and they accepted Islam, including the king, which is mentioned. And in my video, I scanned it, I wrote to the National Library of India and the National Library of London, and I got their reports and I scanned them and I put them all up, who said, yes, people in India saw this event. So, with all that evidence, I can give you more evidence for the splitting of the moon than you can give me for the existence of Alexander. But you believe he existed.
Is that what Sheikh?
Well, yeah.
We'll move on to the quiz session of this event. So let's have it on the screen. All right, quiz session, everyone. And as our past events, only the first person or the person that wins the quiz, ultimately number one, gets the prize. And the prize is a 30 ringgit grab voucher, inshallah ta'ala. So we'll give everyone around 2 minutes to enter the quiz, inshallah. And as always, please use your real name, no funny names. If you do use a funny name and you win, then person number 2 gets the prize.
Can I enter? I want to try.
1 more minute, inshallah, to enter the quiz. We have 60 people, mashallah. We have the real Mirza. Is there a fake Mirza here? Mashallah.
Osama meow? Seriously? Come on, man. You really want to get married that bad?
Alright, 15 more seconds to enter the quiz. Alright, let's start the quiz, inshallah. Youth in a progressing society. So first question, where was Sheikh Uthman born in? USA, Pakistan, Afghanistan, or India? Pakistan. Alhamdulillah. Most people got it right. Alhamdulillah. Next question, inshallah. Me? I got it right. Question number 2. Who did the Prophet say is from his household? Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. Bilal ibn Rabah, Abu Hurairah, Salman al-Farisi, or Zayd bin Thabit? 3 seconds left. The answer is Salman.
Oh, come on.
Look at the leaderboard. Oh, Mirza, mashallah. Raise up Mirza.
Is that the real Mirza or
Mashallah.
the fake one?
Is it a fake Mirza? Next question, inshallah. What does FMEA mean?
Nice.
You have 20 seconds to answer this question.
You're all engineers, come on.
10 more seconds. Will Mirza still be on the top? 3, 2, 1. Failure mode and effect analysis. Mashallah, most people got it right.
You guys can Google well.
And Mirza is still at the top, followed by Sheikh and Muhammad Arif. Question number 4. Who are the closest people to Allah Azza wa Jalla? The hardworking, the pious, the truthful, or the knowledgeable?
It's kind of a trick question. I could make an argument here.
And the answer is the pious people.
إنه يخشى الله من عباده العلماء.
Mirza is still on top. Question number 5. Which scripture was given to Musa alayhi salam? The Quran, the Torah, the Injil, or the Zabur?
You guys get this wrong. Don't worry about your educational standards.
And some people still got it wrong.
Wow. There's 2 people here that the Quran was given to Musa. And there's 7 people here who thought Injil was given to Musa. Wow. What's the rating of this university in the 100? I think you just dropped a couple.
And Arif and Sa'an move up, inshallah. The Mirza is still at the top, conquering the quiz. Question number 6. Why is something considered prohibited in Islam? Because Allah said so, scientific explanations, society decides on a Sheikh Uthman decide.
Definitely green.
It has to be Sheikh.
If anybody goes green, we're going to give it to him. I'm only deciding on Quran and Sunnah. I'm not going to decide on my own. Come on. And 2 people win the prize right now.
Next question, inshallah. Mirza is holding up, mashallah. The top 3 stays.
Whoever was the 2 people, man, see me afterwards, man. You guys are on it.
So did the moon split? Yes, maybe part 2. Maybe we should have maybe part 3 next time. 7 more seconds. Please, everyone, get it right, please.
Somebody chooses maybe part 2.
Allah.
Oh, yeah, Allah. There's some pranksters here. But not those 2 people. They were on point.
And the top 5 stays. Next question, inshallah. The second last. Which ghazwa took place in the month of Ramadan? Uhud, Khandaq, Badr, or Sabur? 3 seconds remain. And the answer is the Ghazwa of Badr. And the real Mirza is still being in. Big Mirza, better watch out. Last question, inshallah. Morality only holds when there is objectivity, divinity, subjectivity, or societal norms. 4 more seconds. And most people got it right. Divinity. And let's have a look at the final leaderboard. So at number 3, we have Faraz. Good job, Faraz, mashallah. Number 2, Shahad, mashallah. And number 1,
Mirza.
Mirza, mashallah. Barakallah. So I know there are a few Mirzas here. Which Mirza won? Please raise your hand. Alright, we'll get back to you after the event, inshallah. Barakallah feekum. And with that, we'll move on to the Q&A session of the event. So regarding the Q&A session, we have 2 modes of asking the Sheikh. The first mode is asking the Sheikh physically, where you raise your hand and then the Sheikh will address your question. And the second mode is through a QR code. But the first mode, physically asking, is what's given priority. So if you're asking through the QR code, but someone raises their hand, they get to ask the Sheikh the question, inshallah.
If they raise hands, you choose. Because then if you don't choose them, I don't want to be the bad guy.
No. So any questions from the physical audience? We'll start with Ahmed Hazm.
Walaikum assalam.
So currently the definition of marriage is out, and the problem that's gonna close all of us is having children. So recently I was talking to my friend that his cousin's going to be married at 30 and she's a girl. So I was wondering how does us as Muslims feel about having babies or IVF, surrogate mothers, and this whole thing.
Good question. So just to rephrase for people to hear, there are societies where the age of marriage is getting older and older, and at certain times it becomes difficult for a husband and wife to procreate, I guess you could say, right? So how does Islam feel about the use of artificial methods in helping in that process? Summarize, good. There's a lot of fiqh to that. There are certain processes that are permissible and certain that are not permissible, right? Depending on whether we can protect the lineage, we can know who the father or the mother is, we can use a method that would protect the sanctity of marriage, meaning you're not bringing external sperm or this or that. I'm not going to go into details of that because I just don't have time for it here. But there are certain procedures that would be permissible and certain that would be outside the realm of permissibility. So if anybody is interested, I would suggest that you speak to a local mufti or imam or a sheikh and explain your particular situation and the process you want to go through, and they will give you an answer, inshallah.
No, Sheikh. Any questions from the sister's side?
Our sisters know everything already, mashallah.
Brothers, any questions?
Wa alaikum assalam.
I am a father of three.
Allahumma barik.
Yes, my youngest is 3 months, and I have kids.
No
in
sleep,
school,
no?
already started school. So my question is, myself, I try my best to follow the Quran and the Sunnah,
Allahumma barik.
which has, I'm sure you know, it has certain labels around, especially in Malaysia. Of course, you know it starts with a W, right?
Into the eye, I got you.
Okay. My question is, when I'm raising my kids, when they go to school, do I ask them to listen to the Ustad, even though what they are teaching, the Prophet did not do? Or do I say to them, we stick to our beliefs, and maybe that would get them in trouble with the Ustad? Can you
Good question.
comment on that?
First thing, the brother is saying he's being labeled as wealthy. Now, when you send your children to school, whether it's an Islamic school or regular school, we should always instill a sense of respect for teachers, for other students, for administrators, because as a Muslim, we're always taught to be respectful. And at the same time, we should always teach our children that obedience to Allah and His Prophet ﷺ is muqaddam, is in preference to anybody else. Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam told us that you will never taste true iman. It's a long hadith, I'm just summarizing for sake of time, until you have three qualities. And one of them is that Allah wa Rasuluhu, Allah and His Messenger are habba ilayhi. They're more beloved to you bin ma siwa, than anything else. Right? And Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam told us that obedience is only in what's good and right. So that means you teach your children to be respectful, you teach your children to have good akhlaq, good mannerisms, but you teach them that even me as your father, if I tell you something against the Quran and the Sahih Hadith and the way of the Salaf, then you reject me and you accept what's qala Allah wa qala Rasul. So no doubt that if a teacher in a school or a principal or a policeman or somebody else tells them something that's against what qala Allah or qala Rasul alayhi salam has mentioned from Sahih Hadith, then we have to say you do not accept that. You still stay respectful because we live in a multi-ethnic, harmonious society, and you want to always show respect. But that doesn't mean you have to accept a view that is against the Quran and Sunnah. Right?
Any questions? Yes, Dino.
I wanted to ask, it's not about children in society. It raises a question because you come from America, so I'm guessing over there right now, at this current time, a lot of people have different opinions about how they want to describe themselves, how they want to be called, or pronouns. So, within that sense, if I were to raise my kids right now in America, for example,
Okay.
how do you think, from someone who also experienced on this religion, what would you suggest, or what do you think you can maintain the Islamic principles in kids who are going to school, mixing up with other students from different views, different backgrounds, and also teachers that do, in a way, influence some sort of ideology along with media?
So no doubt that whether you live in America or almost every country in the world, there more in America and more in some other countries, there are challenges of societal norms changing. Somebody may want to be referred to as a cat. I'm a cat. Now I'm going to meow, and you're going to accept me as a cat. And if you don't think I'm a cat, you're a bigot. Right? That's their choice. Somebody can think they're a cat. I'm not going to stop that. But I have to teach my children reality. Right? The English language has certain pronouns for certain genders, and that's reality. That's not my opinion. Right? And no doubt that biologically, if you take it to science, there are two genders. I mean, you can get Gray's Anatomy, look at it if you like, or go to the bathroom, check, it's up to you, right? But in the end, that's reality, and I'm going to teach my children what's real. And if somebody decides that no, if our brother here thinks he's a flying dragon, then you have to say he's a flying dragon. That's their choice. But I'm not going to tell my children that which is false. And I'm going to build an environment in my house, in my masjid, in my community that fosters a true understanding of what reality is in accordance to Quran and Sahih Hadith. And you will have to have that close relationship with your children, that honest relationship, that they understand that sometimes what people say may not be reality. And you, as a parent, with evidences, with scientific, Quranic, hadith, authentic evidences, will teach them to upbring them in a society that may not understand those values, but still having values. Go ahead. It's up to him. Go ahead.
Yeah, I wanted just to ask, so what you suggesting to me, since you asked me, say to be honest with them,
Yeah.
should I be kind of, I'm trying to find the right word,
Blunt?
but if I wanna, like, should I just bring it up first before they are exposed to it?
Well, it depends, right? Should you bring it up or will they bring it up? Depends. Certain things you don't want to bring up until a child is mentally ready for that discussion, right? Don't bring up Barbies and Ken dolls, right? You want to leave that discussion to where it's a right time, right? But certain things you may notice in their environment and may warn them about, so when they go into that environment, they'll be ready for it, right? But that's going to depend. You don't want to take a 2-year-old and start explaining things that you should be explaining to a teenager, right? This is why parenting takes skill, right? And that's why you can always go and speak to your local imams and ulama and discuss these things. And ulama should be open to that guidance that they should be giving people, inshallah.
Before we continue, we'll limit it to 2 questions per person, inshallah, so that everyone has a chance to ask their question. Before we go with you, Mohsin, any questions from the sisters, inshallah, to keep it fair?
No questions at all, and you know everything about everything, mashallah. Your sister's halaqah is really good.
We'll go with you, Mohsin.
You mentioned the hadith for 3 qualities to gain
Yeah.
Could you tell us about 2 qualities?
So the hadith mentions 3 things. 1, that you love Allah and His Messenger above everything else. 2nd, that you love somebody only for the sake of Allah, for no other reason except for the sake of Allah. And 3rd, you hate to go back to your ignorance, your jahiliyyah, like you would hate to be thrown in the fire. So you will not taste the sweetness of Iman until you bring these 3 qualities into yourself. Kama qala sallallahu alaihi wasallam, to the meaning of the hadith, and Sahih hadith. Go ahead.
Any questions, inshallah, from the audience here? Yes.
Sheikh, if I may ask, is voting in a Muslim country, not Islam, Muslim country, halal?
Is voting in a Muslim country halal? That takes some explanation, because not all voting is the same, right? And not all situations are the same. In essence, Islam has its own way of decision making, meaning you have an Amir, whether it's a Khalifa, whether it's an Amir of an area, he may have a shura of the people that he represents. Like in the time of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, there would be people from the different qabail that would represent their areas, and they would go and they would come together and they would choose a leader and they would give bay'ah, they would give the allegiance. Right? in such a situation, maybe the Amir would like to know what people think and he asks for a vote. That's possible. But the Amir would still have the right to make the decision even if it's against the majority. Right? That's the Islamic method of ruling. Right? Now, and this is a very summarized answer, obviously, there's a lot more fiqh to this. But now if you live in a society, whether it's Muslim or not, that believes that there is a majority that's going to be accepted over anything else, like over the Quran, over the Sunnah, whatever, like in many societies, whether the vote is there, then that's what's going to be society's norm, then that's not Islamic. But then again, there might be times when there is a maslahah, when there is a darar, a harm that you need to get away from, and you may speak to local ulama, and they might tell you, yes, you should vote, because here, there is a maslahah for the ummah. And that is going to be case by case, situation by situation. But the correct method of governance is that which the Islam has shown us from the Quran, from the Sunnah, the way of the Salaf al-Ummah, the way of the Khulafa, like Abu Bakr, Umar, Uthman, Ali, radiallahu anhum, and those who follow them in righteousness ruled by, that's the correct one. Right? But in other situations, you may have still some situations. For example, you might be in a country that's going to vote whether there should be masjids or not. Masajid, right? So here, the ulama might, and I'm not giving this, I'm just giving an example. You would speak to a mufti or alim. They will tell you that yes, there is a maslahah for the ummah. If you don't have masajid, where are we going to pray? So yes, go and vote, right? And that's it. But other than that, to use that method of just majority rule is not correct.
No, sure. Any more questions, inshallah? We'll take one question from the pigeonhole. Okay, I have a question.
Okay, some sister asked, how would you approach youth who had been raised Muslim but had ended up with religious trauma to re-approach Islam?
Good question. How would you approach youth that were raised Muslim but had religious trauma, which is a term I've never heard of, that's pretty cool, I can coin that. And then how to get them back towards Islam. I would approach them the same way I would approach somebody who was not Muslim. Meaning I would go back to the core belief, not about cultural practices or family practices. I would go back and ask them, what do you believe? Where do you think we came from? Do you think there is a creator? And if there is a creator, who is that creator? How would we know the creator is true? How would we know which message is true? I would talk about the miracles of the Quran. I would talk about the miracles of the Prophet ﷺ. I would talk about the purpose of life, the meaning of life, Jannah, Jahannam, and I would rebuild that iman. And then I would correct whatever trauma they went through. Whatever they went through, I would explain to them why that's not a part of Islam, because nothing in Islam is traumatic. Allah never burdens the soul more than they can bear. And I would clarify those things, and slowly, with wisdom and patience, inshallah, with dua, I would hope that Allah brings them back to the truth.
No. Any questions from the audience?
All right, sister started now, mashallah, they're not stopping. Go ahead. Not without the mic. So.
Hello? Okay.
Yes.
Okay, so my question is, I think it's often asked a lot because a lot of people tell me that Islam supports like patriarchal values, but I always say no, that's not the case. Islam doesn't believe in equality for women. But another point they bring up is that like when it comes to the household, like a man's the one in charge. Like how some people try to explain is that it's like the man in the driving seat and like a woman would be like in the passenger seat. So I don't in
the president sits in the back seat. Come on.
Okay. Yeah, so I know it's brought up a lot. There is a lot of like arguments going on about Islam and patriarchy and feminism. But I believe that Islam does like support equality for women. So how would you respond to like questions? Like especially people quote the Quran and they say that they point these ayahs and they're like, Islam is a patriarchal religion. How would you respond to that?
That's a great question. Patriarchal, or I don't know if matriarchal, I don't know what the other thing is called. But today we discuss red pill movement and feminism and women's lib and this and that. I would suggest as a Muslim, we leave all this alone. leave the red pill movement, leave feminism, leave this ism, leave that ism. I would say you study the religion, right? Don't let them quote ayat and just give their fatwa. You should go and study. You should go to a reliable scholar who has Quran, who knows hadith, who knows the evidences, who knows authentic, not somebody who you think you want the opinion from. Islam's not a buffet, like I like this, I don't like this. No. Who knows the religion well and study the religion from the beginning. Not just study this subject, right? Because Islam is a whole system, right? So everybody, no doubt, has certain roles in life. And no doubt that Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he set such a beautiful example for us that even in issues having to do with the state, he would consult his wife and take the opinions. Like Salama regarding the issue of cutting the hair and doing the umrah that could not be done. And this is something I suggest if you like. By the way, I don't make money off YouTube. I don't need the views. I'm not trying to plug that way, right? But we do have a series called The 100, which I just started teaching, and it's free. And it's about 100 most important personalities that every Muslim should know. And the first, I think, 4 that I mentioned in the Muqaddimah, and 2 after that have all been women. And I didn't choose them because they were women. It's not affirmative action here, but they were such important people in the history of Islam that I felt that every Muslim needed to know them and the contributions they gave to Islam. So go watch it. Take your notes and respond to them. Then we have the life of the Prophet ﷺ, all free, online. You don't have to sign up. You don't need to do anything, right? Go watch it. All of it gives evidences. And then learn yourself. What does Allah want from me? What is my role in life? What are my responsibilities? What is my capacity that I need to use for the religion? And B, educate those people then. When they just throw verses out, educate them of context. Educate them of tafsir, of hadith, of what actually happened, right? So that inshallah, you can educate them and teach them and educate yourself and teach yourself and live in that harmony that Allah has set for the household. Like Allah.
We had a question from Brother Shahi. Okay. Yes, brother.
How did you develop your patience? Because sometimes
I don't know if I'm patient.
sometimes in your videos, even I as a viewer would see that you've answered the question like 5, 6 times, and I get angry at that, and I have to pause the video and resume it at another time.
I wish I could pause life.
How
Tell some Christian mission. Let me just pause this right now. I need to get back to the music.
Is it something that comes with age, with experience?
Age? How old do you think I am? Gotta insult it right now. I'm going back to IU. To be honest, this question is asked a lot, and it's a very good question. How am I patient in the face of sometimes ignorance, sometimes Islamophobia, sometimes stupidity, sometimes, when you answer a question and they ask the same question and you're like, I just answered that 5 times, and you're counting down and they're still, because they don't have an answer, they just want to go in a loop. I always draw strength from the life of the Prophet ﷺ and the example of the Sahaba and the Salaf al-Salihin that was set before us. Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam explained the issue of Tawheed and the evils of shirk to his family, to his people, to his qawm, to others, repeatedly. And even though he was the best of mankind, he was so patient with them. Even the people of Ta'if, they harmed him physically, he made dua for them. When the people would harm him, he would make dua to Allah, oh Allah, guide my people, they don't know what they're doing. Yes. And the Salaf al-Salihin, the great examples that we have from the Sahaba and others in their patience and what they did for the religion, set a very high bar. So looking at that and learning of that and contemplating on that and going back, as I taught the seerah, I had to research the seerah, and I would suggest all of you learn the seerah, the authentic seerah from Sahih Hadith. That you go and you learn that. And when you learn that, subhanAllah, the patience will come itself. When you make Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam the role model, then you become patient. Without that and the help of Allah, it's very difficult. I would have punched a lot of people back.
Would you mind telling us the story when you missed that?
Of the video or
just what?
I got stabbed. So what happened is so I was attacked twice during da'wah. The first time was at Balboa Park. Both times was caught on video. I was at Balboa Park. We were giving da'wah. I was actually speaking to a couple that believed that Jesus was Korean, and they did not watch 21st Jump Street. But they were explaining to me about Korean Jesus, and I was speaking to them, and there's a guy that came with a weapon, and he was yelling and cursing any Islamic values and mocking Islam and so on. And of course, we were trying to be patient, and some of our brothers went to him to calm him down, and he pulled out a knife, and he had a metal baton. The video is online, you can watch it. I mean, then I went up to him and he ran away, and then I turned around and he tried to attack me from the back. When I turned around, he ran away again like the coward. And then, obviously the police was called and he got arrested. And we have it on video, and he did some jail time. The second time I was attacked, I was not at the ballpark. I was actually driving to a dentist appointment, and there was a guy that started yelling and cursing, and I was just walking, but I was dressed like a obviously visibly Muslim, and apparently he had seen my videos. Hopefully he subscribed. I wonder if he liked the videos. So anyway, when I got in my car, I was leaving, he followed me, and so kind of a long story, I'm summarizing. But in the end, I went to a gas station or a petrol station, I don't know what she is calling here. And he came around the side and he was cussing, and I told him to get down from his car and face me. And he got down, and I recorded him. The police can know that I didn't initiate the encounter. And it got physical. I hit him as well, and he apparently couldn't fight, so he pulled out a knife. But alhamdulillah, I had his right arm with my left arm, even though I didn't know he had a knife at the time, because I was trying to punch him with my right. He sliced me. He didn't get a good job, but he cut me on the side of my stomach. And alhamdulillah, when I saw the blood, I realized, I grabbed his arm with both hands, I twisted, he dropped the knife, I went for the knife, he ran away. I got the knife from him. And then I drove to the ER, and alhamdulillah, I got stitched up, and I gave the knife to them. The police was called, the police came, the case was made, and he was arrested, alhamdulillah. So that's it. And I'm good. Alhamdulillah, I'm walking around, just a little scar left. And inshallah, there's a brother here in Malaysia that we're going to be working on a documentary about my life, and we're going to show all the evidences and have interviews with some of the police officers and the district attorney about the issue. So we'll get more details when that comes out, inshallah.
Sheikh, may Allah preserve you, Sheikh. Ameen. Any more questions, inshallah? Yes, sister at the back.
Go ahead.
Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullah.
My question is regarding religious identity. I'll explain a bit because I've always found this very confusing, especially from the society I belong to, Pakistan. It's like if a non-Muslim asks me I usually respond that yes, I'm a Muslim, alhamdulillah. But if a Muslim asks me, then I have to categorize myself.
Mm-hmm.
So I do know that different caste systems do exist in
Caste or sex?
Sex. Yeah. Sorry, lack of a better word.
No problem.
Yeah. They do exist, but for example, if I ask you to introduce yourself,
Sure.
would you introduce yourself as it is, or you would classify further? And what's the importance of it?
Great question.
Yeah.
So, first off, as Muslims, we should not hyphenate our Islam. Okay? Meaning we should not be, I'm an Ahmadi Muslim, or a Qadiani Muslim, or a Ismaili Muslim, or a Shia Muslim, or this Muslim, or that Muslim, or a progressive Muslim, or a modern Muslim, or a fun Muslim, or a fundamentalist Muslim, or a whatever people have added to themselves, we should not. The Quran calls us Muslim. The Prophet ﷺ called us Muslim. So that's enough for us. When people ask me, non-Muslims, what are you? I say, I'm Muslim. When Muslims ask me, what are you? I say, I'm Muslim. And then they ask me, what type of Muslim? And I tell them, the Muslim type. And then they know, but what Muslim? I say, the Muslim. That's it. Why do I need to segregate myself from the rest of the Ummah? Huh? Why do I need to be a Sufi Muslim or a, I don't know, whatever else Muslim? No. I believe in the Quran. I believe in the Prophet ﷺ. I believe in Jannah. I believe in Jahannam. I believe in the Day of Judgment. I believe in everything that's authentically established from the Prophet ﷺ. I believe the best of the Sahaba, best of the generation were the Sahaba, because that's what the Prophet ﷺ told us. And the best generation were the ones that after that and the one after that. I believe the great scholars of this Ummah, all were great scholars. I respect all of them. Abu Hanifa and Malik and Shafi'i and Ahmad and Bukhari and Abu Dawud and Ibn Majah, and so up to Ibn Taymiyyah and Ibn Rajab and Ibn Mubrid, and then Ibn Uthaymeen, and so on and so on. All those great scholars, I love all of them. Why do I need to say, no, I only love this one and I don't love the others? I don't think scholars are infallible, right? I don't think they're prophets. They can make mistakes. But I believe the Prophet was protected from mistakes, so he's the qudwa, he's the example. So, in short, just say you're Muslim. And if they don't like that answer, it's okay, they don't have to. Stick to it. What is a Muslim? Who submits to the Quran and Sunnah. So if they say that in my Islam, Islam is like this, then tell them, what is the Islam of the Quran? What is the Islam of the Prophet ﷺ? That's the Islam I'm upon. That's the type of Muslim I am. Easy. Clear?
Now, Sheikh, how many questions can we take?
Whenever you want.
No. Any more questions from the audience?
Sisters have a question.
Yes, we'll give the sister the opportunity.
A sister asked, as we know nowadays, it is easier for us to apply al-amr bil ma'ruf, but it's very hard for the second part, which is nahi and al-munkar, even when we do properly and with a lot of wisdom. How to respond to people who always say, mind your own business, or you should not judge me?
Great question. Amr bil ma'ruf wa nahy anil munkar, inviting towards that which is right and forbidding that which is evil, is a responsibility upon every Muslim. If anybody thinks that Islam is just about let me do my thing and let you do yours, then they should look at the example from the Quran. When the punishment of Allah comes on a society, it comes on the whole society. So if you are not actively inviting towards good and forbidding what is evil, you're not protecting the society that you live in. The Prophet ﷺ gave us the example of a beautiful hadith, or he gave us an example in a beautiful hadith about a people that are on two decks of a ship. Paying attention? You got it, right? Two decks of a ship. So the people on the upper deck allow the people on the lower deck to make a hole so they can get water without bothering the people on the upper deck. What will happen? They all sink. So the people on the upper deck have to stop the people on the lower deck from making a hole. They tell them, look, we'll bring you the water, don't worry, but don't make a hole, right? So Rasulullah ﷺ gave that example, saying this is the example of those who hold the boundaries of Allah and those who violate them. That those that are sticking to the Quran and the Sunnah, those that are holding the boundary, if they don't stop the evil, then all sink. Right? So you give them this hadith. When somebody says, mind your business, tell them, look, you are my business. Because if your sin brings the punishment upon the ummah, then I get destroyed too. Rasulullah told Aisha in another Sahih hadith that there will be an army that will be coming to attack, and then the earth will swallow the whole army. Aisha had the amazing mind that she had, the intelligent woman that she was. She said, oh Messenger of Allah, those that were coming to attack, I understand. But there might be people that were with them that weren't from the army. Maybe they were selling to them, maybe they were hired guys. Why would they be destroyed? So Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam told us that when the punishment of Allah comes, it comes on all. So they'll all be destroyed, but they'll be raised on the day of judgment according to their intention. Right? So then if somebody is doing evil, and it brings evil in the society, we all have to pay for it. Even on the day of judgment, we may be free from the sin because we're not involved in it, but we have to stop it. Right? Think of it this way. If you live in Malaysia, what's the speed limit here? In motorways, mostly. Oh, like as if you follow the speed limit. So. 50? 60 kilometers or miles? Oh, that's low, man. I can't live here. Never mind. Okay, so let's say 60 kilometers is the speed limit, and you're going 120 like me. I mean, no, you're just going 120 miles. Anyway, right? And the police officer sees you. What are they going to do? They're going to stop you, right? What if you tell the police officer, mind your business? It's my car, it's my life. I put the petrol in it, gas or whatever. Mind your business. He's going to say, no. These are rules and regulations of the country that you have to follow. Just like that, there are rules and regulations of Islam that you have to follow. Now, how will you do the Nahy and al-Munkar will be 3 times. If you're the Hakim, if you're the ruler, then you will do it bil-yad, with hand. Force it. Somebody's stealing, you will stop them. Somebody's killing, you will stop them. You're the law. Right? If you are not the Hakim, then you will do it bil-lisan. With your tongue, you will talk, you will say, but then you have to say something. And if you're oppressed, like you're in a country where you cannot, like some of the Soviet Union times, you couldn't say anything, then even then you can't accept it. You have to hate it with your heart. And the Prophet ﷺ said, ذَاكَ عَدْعَفُ الْإِيمَانِ. That is the lowest level. If you don't hate sin with your heart, your iman is out. May Allah protect us.
More questions, inshallah. Sorry, can you ask two?
Someone else needs to ask.
We'll go with Ahmed, inshallah.
Ask somebody else to ask for you to ask for the other person.
Okay, so in Quran, check a bit of history, right?
Right?
You can like look at a little bit of like a portion of history. Okay, where is this with the history? Where is the dinosaurs in the Quran?
Where are the dinosaurs in the Quran?
Well, like, what do you not hear about like really old history? Like, what's happening with the dinosaurs?
Great question.
Like, just like a void in the pyramid, like there's Adam, nothing, like prophets.
All right. So first thing, and let me repeat the question in a summarized way, and then you can correct me if I got it, which is, where is the rest of the history of mankind in the Quran? Because we hear about prophets, but there's many things that I'm sure went on the planet, like, for example, the possibility of having dinosaurs that's not mentioned in the Quran directly, right? That's your question? The Quran is not a history of the earth book. It's Hudan lil-Muttaqeen. It is is that like a cat or something? Looks like a Hello Kitty. Okay, I got you. So the Quran is not there to tell you that there used to be a dodo bird and then it went extinct, and there used to be another bird called whatever, right? That's not the point of the Quran. The Quran is a guidance, right? So that which is muta'alliq, what has to do with your salvation, is going to be in the Quran. Right? The Quran is not going to tell you there were plates and then there was merger of the plates and they broke and a meteorite hit and then, right? None of that is going to be there. Different types of animals that may have lived, may not have lived. I'm not going to mention the Quran. That's not what the Quran does. Why are the prophets mentioned? Because that has to do with guidance. Why is this the origin story of the humans and jinn mentioned? Because that has to do with our belief. But whether there were dinosaurs or not, whether they stood or swam, or whether they had leather skin or the feathers, it has nothing to do with guidance. So those things are not going to be in the Quran. The Quran is going to be everything you need for your salvation. You got me?
No, sure. You can still take more questions, Sheikh.
I think we're going to be wrapping it up. Take more? Two more. I think you said
Two more questions. Final two questions. Any questions from the
I
audience?
think sisters have one, so we can be fair. Give them precedence.
I don't really have a question. I just wanted to know which languages you speak.
That's a question. How many
Which
languages?
languages do you speak?
You want to guess?
You said 4 or 5. Oh, you need to guess the languages.
Yeah.
And then.
No? Come on, let's guess.
Okay, I'll guess 1.
English. You got it.
Arabic.
Yes, you got 2. Keep going. No? Pashto. You got 3. You got 4. Keep going now.
Japanese.
Japanese, no. Arigato gozaimasu. I do appreciate that, but no. I did take some Japanese, but I'm definitely not fluent in it. I speak Urdu, I speak Pashto, I speak English, I speak Arabic. Those are my fluent languages. Then I speak a good amount of Spanish, although I'm not really fluent in it anymore. I used to be, but not enough practice now. I understand a good amount of, for example, Punjabi or Hindi, which, because if you know Urdu, you can understand them. I can usually understand a good amount of Farsi, but I don't speak those languages. So those that I speak fluently would be English, Arabic, Urdu, and Pashto, and then Spanish to a certain extent.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
The last question, inshallah.
Choose it wisely. All right, sisters,
Yes.
okay. Let's just take both of those, because sisters have one too, but go ahead. Yeah, go ahead.
What would be my answer to someone who believes that humans are born attracted to the same gender?
Rather than getting kicked out. What would be your answer to somebody who believes that humans are born attracted to the same gender? Huh? Tell you. So the first thing is, what does that affect anything? Right? Meaning that if somebody is born attracted to the same gender, does that mean that it's okay for them to engage in relations, types of personal relations with the same gender? That's the first question, right? Because what if somebody claims that they were born attracted to their sister? Or they were born attracted to a monkey? Or they were born attracted to me, right? Which I couldn't blame you, right? That's, right? But then you would have to say, just because you're born with a certain attraction doesn't mean you can act on it. That's the first thing. Secondly, that if what they mean by it is that there is a genetic code that makes a person homosexual, then the easy question is, where's its gay gene? Right? I can tell you which genetics are responsible for your eye color, for your hair color, for even your skin tone, for everything. We as a scientific society have mapped out the genetic code. There is no gay gene, right? I mean, genes, anyway, right? But so that's the question. Is there a particular genetic makeup? Because many people are in heterosexual relations and then they go into homosexual relationships, or they were in homosexual relationship and they go into heterosexual. So it's not something you can blame on genetics. Okay? Now, somebody could be naturally inclined to alcoholism. In fact, there have been studies done that Native Americans were genetically inclined towards alcoholism. Does that mean it's okay for them to get drunk, get in a car, and hit somebody? No. Even if you have an inclination towards something genetically, still, if it's something that is not permissible, then you have to fight that inclination and stay away from it. Right? Some people, like myself, may have a bad temper, but you've seen my videos, I control it most of the time, right? So that means that even though I may have a genetic bad temper, my dad had a bad temper, my grandfather had a bad temper, right? For students, I think all have bad tempers, right? But that doesn't mean I can punch somebody, right? So that means you have to now ask the question that is whatever you feel you're inclined towards permissible or not? And then you can go back to the Old Testament, you can go to the New Testament, you can go to the Quran, you can go to any religious tradition, and you will find that the relationship between a man and woman is the only one that was approved by God. If you look at Leviticus in the Old Testament, or Romans in the New Testament, or the story of Lut alayhi salam in the Quran, you will find that those things are condemned. So even if somebody had an inclination, they would have to fight it off, just like if somebody had an inclination toward pornography or bestiality or anything else. Sisters, last question. This was the extra one I gave you guys, come on.
Can I take that?
Did they have one or is he gonna take it?
So my question was that, for example, if I saw a non-hijabi or a non-hijabi who's a non-Muslim, and I feel like this question might sound kind of silly, but like, for example, her hair is really beautiful, like she's done her hair really nicely that day, and then I compliment her like, mashallah, you look really nice, your hair is really nice. So am I contributing, how do I say this?
Contributing to her not becoming a Muslim and a hijabi?
Or like, also does that work in a, yeah.
I got you, okay.
And also does that work, and is that the same with like also non-hijabis for Muslims? Like if I were to compliment their hair, yeah.
So, I mean, whether somebody is a Muslim or not Muslim, or hijabi or not hijabi, if you feel that their hair looks nice and you tell them, hey, your hair looks nice, nothing wrong with that. But I would suggest with that you use the opportunity for da'wah, right? Because as a Muslim, you do realize that your Creator has ordained a certain honor for a woman, generally, and especially for Muslim women, to be properly covered, right? So you may add with that, like, you have such beautiful hair, and I'm sure every guy walking by looking at, your great skin tone or whatever else, I'm not going to get too graphic here, right? But you may tell them, look, think about people looking at you and judging you for your appearance. Like if your hair didn't look good, would you still not be a great person? If you didn't do your hair that day, does that mean that you're any less of a nice person? Then imagine if you were in a dress code that people would judge you for your mannerisms, people would respect you for your ideas, people would have to think about the words coming out of your mouth, not the size of your whatever, height, shape, whatever you want to say, right? And I would use that opportunity with wisdom, for da'wah. If you see a Muslim sister, even more so. Mashallah, you're a Muslim, Allah has blessed you with Islam, and you're so beautiful. And if that beauty was for what Allah has ordained it to be for, wouldn't that be better? Where you were not somebody that people would be, looking at, and you may not be looking at her in an evil way, because mashallah, you're not that kind of person, but many of those other people in that society do look at her in an evil way. And even though they shouldn't, but that's the reality we live in, right? Good. So nothing wrong with complimenting somebody, but follow it up with some da'wah, inshallah. All right, we'll just take one more because he was. Go ahead. Go ahead. I'm breaking the rules. That's what I do.
I think it's been like 99 years since the last caliphate was destroyed.
The what?
I think it's been 99 years since the last caliphate was destroyed.
1998?
99 years.
Oh, 99 years.
So.
I should not have taken this question. Go ahead. I'm just kidding.
I know, it's a bit long, but do you think the best thing to do is to reinstate caliphate? And by the way, what would you say is the best way to sort of like build it up, like to go about it?
Good question. Really deep question, and good one to close on so that I can not be invited back. He said there's been 98 years since the last caliphate. Well, I question that, right? Because the Khilafah Uthmaniyya, was it really a Khilafah, right? I mean, it was pretty much a kingdom, right? I mean, if that was a Khilafah, then why isn't, I'm not going to mention names of countries, but why isn't an oil-rich Middle Eastern country a Khilafah, right? I mean, they didn't rule the whole Ummah, obviously. The Ottomans had, the Mughal had their own areas and their other dynasties at the same time. They were a kingship, right? They may take bay'ah, but so do many countries today. So first thing, I know the Hizb ut-Tahrir has all these books out and stuff, but I don't buy that, first off. Secondly, I think every Muslim would love to see the Khilafah, right? But how would we go about reinstating it? When the majority of the Muslims may not pray 5 times Salah, do you really think we're ready? Right? People are like, we shouldn't have Jum'ah until we have a Khilafah. Man, you're not going to bring Jum'ah for a long time, right? We don't know when the next Khilafah will be, but you cannot artificially force it. Because when the Ummah is not ready for it, then when you try to artificially, through political coups or whatever else, try it, then it only causes more harm. Right? So I think the important thing for the Ummah is, one, to educate them on what the Khilafah is, what is the Islamic method of ruling, and to educate them on the importance of the individual obligation that we're not fulfilling, like Amr bin Maruf and Nahan al-Munkar, like giving da'wah, like calling towards the obedience to the Quran and Sunnah. When the majority of the Ummah is stuck in bid'ah and shirk and things, and you're like, we're going to have a khilafah, man, you're going to have a hard time running your own people. And that's why most of the political movements that tried it have not only failed, but they brought greater harm to the Ummah. But many Muslims are now, they have a disdain for anybody even mentions these names, even though we should believe in the Islamic rule, the Khilafah system, and implement it, right? So I think right now the more important thing is really to educate, to learn. Most people don't know Aqidah, the basics. What are the three forms of knowing Tawheed, or what is the difference between Ta'wilat and Ithbat? People don't know these things, and this is Fard al-Ain, an individual obligation. And then they're like, one Khilafah today. Anyway, so before I get myself in any more trouble, I think we should educate the Ummah, but there are definitely steps that we should be taking. And the first of those is to first and foremost implement Islam in our own life, in our communities, and give da'wah to others to join the Ummah, and to learn our proper belief and practice it correctly, our salawat, our fasting, our daily rituals that are Fard al-Ain upon us. And with that, then work for a greater Ummah and unity and so on. Jazakallah khair. We'll wrap it up.
Jazakallah khairan, Sheikh. Barakallahu feekum. To Sheikh Uthman for taking this. Thank you so much, Sheikh, for taking time out of your busy schedule to be with us. And more so, Jazakallah khairan to Hidayah Center Foundation for bringing Sheikh to Malaysia and inviting us to invite Sheikh to our campus. And Jazakallah khairan to all the audience for attending and taking time out of your Monday. Barakallahu feekum. Before we wrap it up, I just want to announce that inshallah in 2 weeks' time, we will be having our event called Discover Islam Week. Discover Islam Week, where we have 2 days of da'wah workshop, where we will be taught on how to give da'wah to the people, and 5 days worth of lectures and talking about Islam, educating people about Islam. And last announcement, inshallah, is that we will do the Isha prayer in our masjid straight away after this, inshallah. Jazakumullah khairan, barakallahu feekum, subhanakallahumma wa bihamdik, ashhadu an la ilaha illa anta, astaghfiruka wa atubu ilayk. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Jazakumullah.
And the process. And no, center. Yeah, stay.
Well, we're going to stay here for a second.